Tessa Ellis had worked at Harbor Brew, a small coffee shop in her close-knit town, for many years. She loved her job, the community, and the warm, comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee that filled the air every morning. The shop was more than just a place to work. It was a part of her life. Regular customers came daily, and Tessa knew many of them by name. The sound of friendly chatter and soft music created a welcoming atmosphere that made Harbor Brew a beloved gathering spot. But one morning, everything changed. The routine hum of the coffee shop was interrupted when a health inspector arrived unannounced. He was a stern-looking man, clipboard in hand, moving swiftly through the shop, checking every corner with a critical eye. His presence alone made the employees nervous, and his strict demeanor left no room for casual conversation. At that moment, a veteran named Victor entered the shop, his service dog walking obediently by his side. Victor was a quiet man, someone who had dedicated years of his life to serving his country. His service dog was not just a companion but a lifeline, helping him navigate his daily challenges with confidence and ease. The bond between them was undeniable, and those who knew Victor admired his quiet strength. As soon as the health inspector noticed the dog, he stiffened. His expression darkened, and in a firm, authoritative voice he declared, "No animals are allowed in this establishment." Tessa, who had been behind the counter preparing an order, overheard the exchange and immediately stepped forward. She knew the law protected service animals, and that Victor had every right to bring his dog inside. Taking a deep breath, she calmly but firmly explained, "Service animals are allowed in public spaces under federal law. This dog is not a pet, but a working companion that helps Victor with essential tasks." The health inspector frowned, his grip on the clipboard tightening. "Rules are rules," he said coldly. "Either the dog leaves, or there will be consequences." Tessa stood her ground, refusing to back down. She knew she was right, and more importantly, she knew that allowing Victor and his dog to stay was the right thing to do. The tension in the shop grew thick as customers fell silent, watching the confrontation unfold. Then, the owner of Harbor Brew stepped out from the back, having heard the raised voices. He was a businessman first, and rather than risk trouble with the health department, he made a swift and shocking decision. Turning to Tessa, he spoke sharply, "You're fired. Clear out your locker." The words hit her like a physical blow. She stood frozen in disbelief, unable to process what had just happened. After years of dedication, after pouring her heart into her work, she was being dismissed in an instant, all for standing up for what was right. Tears welled in her eyes as she gathered her belongings. The once familiar sounds of the coffee shop now felt distant, like an echo of a life she had suddenly lost. As she stepped outside, the cool morning air stung her skin, a harsh reminder of how quickly everything had changed. The pain of betrayal sat heavily on her chest, but beneath it was a sense of pride. She had done the right thing. Tessa walked aimlessly through the town, questions swirling in her mind. Had she made a mistake? Was it worth it to stand up for what was right if it meant losing everything she had worked for? Her thoughts drifted to her late father, a man of strong morals who had always told her, "Courage is more important than comfort." Those words now felt both like a comfort and a challenge. Just when she thought she had reached her lowest point, something unexpected happened. A sleek black limousine pulled up near the park, where she had taken a seat on a stone bench. The vehicle stood out in the small town, and a few curious onlookers paused to watch. From the car stepped a well-dressed man with an air of authority and quiet strength. He was Colonel Daniel Harper, a respected Marine commander, known for his unwavering dedication to veterans. Word of the incident at Harbor Brew had reached him, and he had come with a purpose. As he approached, Tessa felt a strange mix of hope and disbelief. This was someone important, someone who had fought for justice in ways she could hardly imagine. Why was he here? Colonel Harper stopped in front of her and extended a hand, his expression both serious and kind. "Miss Ellis, I believe we need to talk." Tessa hesitated for only a moment before shaking his hand, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. She didn't know what was coming next, but she had a feeling that her life was about to take a dramatic turn. The aftermath. Tessa's dismissal became the talk of the town. Word spread quickly, and while some sided with the coffee shop's decision, Many were outraged by the unfair treatment she had received. Customers who had been loyal to Harbor Brew for years began boycotting the establishment, demanding that Tessa be reinstated. Social media was flooded with messages of support, and before long, local news stations picked up the story. Despite the growing support, Tessa struggled with the emotional weight of the situation. She had always believed in doing the right thing, but for the first time in her life, she questioned whether standing up for her beliefs had been worth it. Without a job, she faced uncertainty about her future, and self-doubt crept in. One evening, she sat by her window, staring out at the street below. The town she had loved now felt foreign, and the thought of starting over was overwhelming. But deep down, she knew she couldn't let this setback define her. She had fought for what was right, and no matter how difficult the road ahead seemed, she couldn't allow fear to dictate her next steps. Her moment of self-reflection was interrupted by a knock at the door. She opened it to find a group of people standing outside. Customers from Harbor Brew, friends, and even strangers who had heard her story. They had come to show their support, and to remind her that she was not alone. One woman stepped forward. "We believe in you, Tessa," she said. "You did the right thing, and we want to help." Tessa was moved to tears. In that moment, she realized that her act of kindness had sparked something bigger than herself. It wasn't just about a coffee shop or a single veteran. It was about standing up for fairness and integrity. And if others were willing to stand with her, she knew she couldn't give up. That night, Tessa made a decision. She would not let this moment break her. She would rise from it, stronger than ever. And as she sat down to plan her next steps, she had no idea that her journey was only just beginning. Tessa followed Colonel Harper into the limousine, still uncertain about what was happening. As the car pulled away, she took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. The interior was elegant yet simple, and the hum of the engine filled the quiet space. "I heard what happened at the coffee shop," Colonel Harper began. His voice was calm but firm. "You stood up for a veteran and his service dog when no one else would. That kind of courage is rare." Tessa's throat tightened. She had been fired for doing the right thing, but hearing someone acknowledge her actions made her feel a little less alone. The colonel continued, "I run a veteran outreach program, helping former soldiers adjust to civilian life. We need people with your kind of heart. Would you be interested in working with us?" Tessa blinked in surprise. "Me? But I've never worked with veterans before." "You stood up for one when it mattered most," he said simply. "That tells me all I need to know." For the first time since losing her job, hope flickered inside Tessa. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was a new beginning. The car arrived at a military base just outside of town. The place was busy, with soldiers and officers moving with purpose. Tessa followed Colonel Harper into a modest but well-lit office. "This is where it starts," he said, handing her a folder. Inside were documents outlining the Veteran Support Program, how they helped soldiers find jobs, adjust to civilian life, and connect with service dogs. Tessa's heart pounded as she read. "You'd be working with veterans one-on-one," Harper explained. "Listening to their stories, helping them rebuild their lives. Think of it as the heart of what you did at the coffee shop. Only now, you'll be making an even bigger difference." Tessa felt overwhelmed but inspired. The pain of losing her job was still fresh, but maybe, just maybe, this opportunity would be worth it. Looking up at the colonel, she nodded. "I'll do it." A smile touched his lips. "Welcome aboard. A new world unfolds." Over the next few days, Tessa was introduced to the world of veteran rehabilitation and reintegration. She shadowed experienced counselors, attended workshops, and listened to powerful testimonies from veterans who had returned to civilian life after years of service. Many struggled with employment, housing, and even daily interactions. Some carried physical injuries, while others bore invisible wounds, PTSD, anxiety, depression. She met Jackson, a former medic who had been searching for steady work, but found it difficult due to his service-related injuries. Then there was Maria, an ex-paratrooper, who suffered from insomnia and found it hard to adapt to the slow-paced civilian world. Their struggles reminded Tessa of something she had always believed in. Everyone deserves dignity and a chance to rebuild their life. The more she listened, the more she understood that veterans needed more than just job opportunities. They needed a sense of belonging. Tessa dedicated herself to the cause, using her organizational skills and natural empathy to assist veterans in finding work, counseling, and proper support. Finding her purpose. One afternoon, as Tessa was helping a veteran fill out job applications, she heard a familiar voice behind her. Tessa. She turned to see Victor standing in the doorway, his service dog beside him. He looked different, stronger, more confident. She smiled, realizing how much had changed since that fateful day at the coffee shop. Victor extended a hand. I wanted to thank you. What you did back at Harbor Brew, it meant a lot. Tessa shook his hand warmly. You don't have to thank me. I just did what anyone should have done. Victor chuckled. Not everyone would have risked their job for it. The two sat down and talked. Victor had been through a lot since leaving the military. Adjusting to life outside the service was a challenge. His service dog had been his anchor, helping him through tough moments. But what made the biggest difference was knowing that there were people out there who still cared. I heard you're working with the Veteran Outreach Program now, Victor said. That's incredible. We need more people like you. His words filled Tessa with gratitude. She realized that everything, the pain of losing her job, the uncertainty that followed, had led her to something greater. Expanding the mission. As weeks passed, Tessa became more involved in developing new programs for veterans. She proposed a mentorship system, pairing new veterans with those who had already successfully reintegrated. The idea was simple. Those who had walked the path before could help guide others through the process. Colonel Harper fully supported the initiative, and soon, the program was up and running. Tessa also spearheaded a service dog training partnership. She connected with organizations that train service animals and helped veterans understand how these dogs could improve their lives. She saw firsthand the transformation that took place when a veteran bonded with a service dog. It wasn't just about assistance, it was about companionship, trust, and healing. One of the most rewarding moments came when Jackson, the former medic, was paired with a service dog named Luna. The once reserved and withdrawn man slowly opened up, finding confidence and comfort in his new companion. Seeing the change in him, Tessa felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. The unexpected apology. One day, as Tessa was finishing up paperwork in the office, she received an unexpected call. This is the regional manager of Harbor Brew, a voice said. We'd like to meet with you. Tessa's heart raced. She hadn't thought about the coffee shop much since she left, but a part of her still carried the pain of what had happened. The next day, she met with the regional manager at a local cafe. He looked uneasy, clearing his throat before speaking. Tessa, we owe you an apology, he said sincerely. What happened to you is wrong. We've received a lot of backlash since the incident, and frankly, it made us reevaluate our policies. Tessa listened as he explained that Harbor Brew had decided to change its stance on service animals. Not only would they now allow service dogs in all locations, but they were also launching a corporate initiative to support veterans. We'd like to offer you your job back, he said. And a promotion. Tessa was taken aback. She had never expected an apology, let alone an offer to return. She took a deep breath, considering his words. Then she smiled. Thank you, she said. But I found my place now. Though she declined the job, she felt an incredible sense of closure. The injustice she had faced had turned into something bigger, a catalyst for change. And in the end, that was what mattered most. As Tessa settled into her new role at the Veteran Outreach Program, she quickly realized that while the work was fulfilling, it was also emotionally demanding. Many of the veterans she worked with faced complex issues, PTSD, financial struggles, and deep feelings of isolation. She knew she had stepped into a world filled with both hope and hardship, and she was determined to rise to the challenge. One of the first major obstacles she encountered was skepticism from some of the veterans. Many had spent years feeling overlooked and dismissed by society, and they weren't quick to trust outsiders, even those with the best intentions. I've seen people like you come and go, one veteran, a man named Charlie, told her one afternoon. They want to help, but they don't understand what we've been through. Tessa didn't take his words personally. Instead, she listened. You're right, she admitted. I haven't been where you've been, But that doesn't mean I don't care. Charlie studied her for a long moment before nodding. We'll see, he muttered before walking away. Tessa knew that trust wouldn't come overnight. She had to prove, through her actions, that she was there to stay. Finding a way forward. Determined to better understand the struggles veterans faced, Tessa spent time learning directly from them. She attended support group meetings, listened to their stories, and even participated in their daily activities. She shadowed a group that worked on rehabilitating service dogs, learning firsthand how these animals helped veterans regain independence. She also started working closely with Colonel Harper on ways to expand the outreach program. One of the biggest challenges they faced was finding sustainable employment opportunities for veterans. Many companies hesitated to hire veterans due to misconceptions about their mental health and adaptability. This has to change, Tessa told Colonel Harper one evening. These men and women have valuable skills. They just need the right opportunities. Together, they launched the Veteran Workforce Initiative, a program designed to connect veterans with local businesses willing to provide training and employment. Tessa met with business owners, explaining why hiring veterans was not just an act of goodwill, but a smart investment. Slowly but surely, companies started signing on. A turning point. One of the biggest success stories of the Veteran Workforce Initiative was Bobby Lawson. A former Marine, Bobby had been struggling with PTSD and had been unemployed for years. He rarely spoke to anyone and spent most of his time avoiding social interactions. Tessa made it her mission to help him. She started by including him in small projects at the outreach center, filing paperwork, assisting with event planning, and eventually working with service dogs. At first, Bobby resisted, but Tessa never gave up on him. Then one day, Bobby walked into her office and said, "I think I'm ready for a job." Tessa felt a surge of excitement. She connected him with a local construction company that had partnered with the Veteran Workforce Initiative. The job wasn't easy, but Bobby took to it with quiet determination. A month later, he returned to the outreach center, standing taller than before. "I feel like myself again," he told Tessa. "Like I have a purpose." A battle against bureaucracy. While the outreach program was making significant progress, Tessa soon found herself facing another challenge: funding. The resources they needed to keep the program running were in constant jeopardy due to bureaucratic hurdles and slow-moving government processes. Tessa spent weeks filling out grant applications and meeting with officials, trying to secure financial support. But time and time again, she was met with obstacles. "We have other priorities," one government official told her dismissively. Frustrated but not defeated, Tessa took a different approach. She reached out to the community, organizing a fundraising event called Freedom Fest, designed to bring awareness and financial support to the program. The event featured local musicians, speakers, and veteran success stories. Businesses donated food and supplies, and hundreds of people attended. By the end of the night, they had raised enough money to keep the program running for another year. More importantly, Freedom Fest caught the attention of state officials, who began reconsidering the funding cuts. A month later, Tessa received a call. Her grant proposal had been approved. The program was safe. The unexpected setback. Just when things seemed to be going well, Tessa faced a personal crisis. The stress of the job, the constant fight for resources, and the emotional toll of working with struggling veterans began to wear her down. One evening, as she was leaving the outreach center, she felt an overwhelming wave of exhaustion. She leaned against the wall, taking deep breaths. She had been so focused on helping others that she had neglected her own well-being. Colonel Harper noticed and pulled her aside. "Tessa, you can't help others if you're running on empty." She knew he was right. She took a few days off, allowing herself time to rest and recharge. During this break, she reflected on everything she had accomplished and reminded herself why she had started this journey in the first place. When she returned, she was stronger than ever. A community transformed. Over time, the impact of the outreach program became evident. Veterans who had once felt lost were now thriving. Businesses that had been hesitant to hire them now sought them out. The town itself had changed. There was a renewed sense of respect and appreciation for those who had served. Freedom Brew, The coffee shop that had once fired Tessa had become a symbol of change. Under new management, it had fully embraced the veteran community, offering discounts to service members and even hosting job fairs. One afternoon, Tessa walked past Freedom Brew and noticed a sign in the window. All who served are welcome here, 2 legs or 4. She smiled. The world was changing, one step at a time. The future beckons. With the success of the outreach program, Tessa and Colonel Harper began discussing expansion. Other towns and cities were expressing interest in replicating their model. The idea of helping even more veterans find hope and purpose filled Tessa with renewed energy. As she looked around at everything she had built, the outreach center, the employment initiative, the growing network of support, she realized something profound. She had lost her job at Harbor Brew, but in doing so, she had found her true calling. And this was only the beginning. The road to expansion. With the success of the outreach program, Tessa found herself at a crossroads. She had built something remarkable, but now she faced the question: how could she expand this impact beyond her town? Requests for guidance started pouring in from other communities. Veterans and local leaders from across the state wanted to replicate the success of the Veteran Workforce Initiative and the Outreach Center. It was both exciting and overwhelming. Could she take this model nationwide? Colonel Harper encouraged her to think big. You've already changed lives here. Imagine what you could do on a larger scale. Tessa knew he was right, but she also knew she couldn't do it alone. She formed a Veteran Empowerment Task Force, a group of dedicated individuals, including veterans, business leaders, and nonprofit organizers, who could help expand the initiative. Their goal was to establish veteran resource hubs in every major city across the state, each offering job training, mental health services, and service dog assistance. The fight for federal support. While local funding had kept the program afloat, scaling it to a national level required government backing. Tessa and Colonel Harper traveled to Washington, D.C., to meet with lawmakers. They presented data showing the success of the program, highlighting veterans who had found jobs, regained stability, and reintegrated into society. At first, the reception was lukewarm. Politicians offered polite nods, but hesitated to commit funding. Then Bobby Lawson, the former Marine who had turned his life around thanks to the program, stood up to speak. I was lost, he told the room. I thought my life was over after the military. This program gave me a second chance. It gave me purpose. If you won't support this for people like me, who will? His words struck a chord. A week later, Tessa received news that federal funding had been approved to launch 5 new veteran resource hubs across the country. It was a monumental victory. National recognition. With the program's expansion, Tessa's work gained national attention. News outlets began covering her journey from a fired coffee shop manager to a national advocate for veterans. She was invited to speak at conferences, share her expertise, and consult with other organizations looking to improve veteran support services. Then came the biggest surprise of all. One morning, Tessa received a letter bearing the presidential seal. It was an official invitation to the White House, where she was to be honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian award in the country. Tears filled her eyes as she read the words. She had never sought recognition, but knowing that her work had made such an impact filled her with an overwhelming sense of pride. At the ceremony, as she stood on the grand stage beside some of the nation's most influential figures, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the simple decision to stand up for a veteran in a coffee shop, she had sparked a nationwide movement. As she accepted the medal, she turned to the audience, which included countless veterans whose lives had been transformed. This isn't just my achievement, she said, her voice strong. It belongs to every veteran who found hope again. It belongs to every person who stood up for what was right. And it all started with a simple cup of coffee. A personal challenge. Despite the success, Tessa faced a personal challenge: burnout. The pressure of running a growing organization, constant travel, and the emotional weight of working with struggling veterans took its toll. One evening, she confided in Colonel Harper. I feel like I'm losing myself in all of this. Harper, ever the wise mentor, nodded. You've given everything to this mission, Tessa. But even leaders need to take care of themselves. Taking his advice, she stepped back slightly, delegating more responsibilities to her growing team. She focused on mentorship, ensuring the next generation of leaders was prepared to continue the mission. The Freedom Brew legacy. Meanwhile, back in her hometown, Freedom Brew had transformed into more than just a coffee shop. Under new management, it had become a gathering place for veterans, a space where they could share stories, support one another, and feel welcome. A new sign hung beneath the original one, inspired by the courage of Tessa Ellis, because one act of kindness can change the world. On the anniversary of her firing, the shop hosted a Veteran Appreciation Day, an event that brought the community together to honor those who served. Tessa attended as a guest of honor, watching as veterans young and old filled the shop with laughter and camaraderie. Looking to the future, as the years passed, the Veteran Empowerment Initiative continued to grow. More resource hubs opened across the country. Thousands of veterans found stability and purpose. And Tessa's story became one of resilience, advocacy, and unwavering belief in doing what's right. One afternoon, as she sat outside Freedom Brew, she was approached by a young woman. "Miss Ellis," the woman said nervously. Tessa smiled. "That's me. I just wanted to say, I read about you, and you inspired me. I want to work with veterans too." Tessa felt a familiar warmth in her chest. "Then you're already on the right path." As the young woman walked away, Tessa realized that her journey had come full circle. She had started by standing up for one veteran. Now, she had inspired an entire generation to continue the work. She had built something that would last. And in the end, that was the greatest legacy of all.